A very good morning to you and welcome to the show. My name is Trix Ingado. Today on the show, we shall be taking a look at what the papers are saying, both locally and internationally. Of course, on the local front, it's all about the BBI, various facets, the good, the bad, the cringeworthy, and we shall be going through them and seeing what has been prioritized as the important elements that came out of that massive event yesterday. But still on that front, Michael?
Yes, we're going to be engaging the leader of the majority in the National Assembly, Honorable Amos Kimunya, on the Building Bridges initiative. Of course, we do know there are a number of issues that were raised by the Deputy President, and he said he speaks for a number that may be as concerned as he is. Remember him admitting that he's a scientist and saying that he might be a little bit slow in understanding. So we're going to be putting the leader of majority in the National Assembly, Honorable Amos Kimunya, on the spot and asking him some of these questions. Remember, you're welcome to participate in this conversation. Just like the Deputy President said, this is not one of those that we can walk away and say that you don't care, because as he quoted Abraham Lincoln, he said that those who do not participate in political events suffer the pain of being led by fools, and I believe that none of us would like to be led by fools. So we have a question for you, and here's the question.
This morning we're asking you, do you think the reservations raised by the DP Ruto about the BBI report are valid? Do you think the reservations raised by the DP about the BBI report are valid? Get on Twitter. The hashtag to use is KTN Morning Express. Tag Michael at Michael G. Gitonga and me at Trix Ingado, and let us know what you think. What was your feel of the general issues that came out, the booing, the jokes, everything that you watched yesterday, and what stood out, particularly given what the leaders highlighted yesterday, and the reservations, particularly by the DP. He put on a brave face, stood up amidst jeering, and said he has reservations and he needs to be convinced just like anyone else. So do you think those reservations by the DP Ruto about the BBI report are valid? Get on Twitter and tell us what you think. I shall be making you a part of the conversation as we go along. But first, let's take a look at what's making headlines internationally and see what is being prioritized as far as geopolitics, business, and African news is concerned. And if we could have the papers on, and let us see what's making headlines. So we're going to start off with The Citizen. This is a paper from Tanzania. Tanzania decides early voting kicks off in Zanzibar today. So that voting starts tomorrow, right? So Tanzanians are expected to cast the ballot on Wednesday, October 28th. That is tomorrow. However, according to this paper, early voting kicks off today in Zanzibar with some special groups casting their votes. They're still giving us an outlook on the coronavirus infections. Tanzania is still at 509. Kenya, according to this paper, is at 34,493. That number is not accurate. We're actually well into the 40,000s. And members say leaked letter on withdrawal of presidential race is outdated. That's still politics. Worry as key Zanzibar opposition politician goes missing. And then Mdi recounts how the tables turned on her. Samsung Electronics shares Lee Kun-hee dies at 78. A bit of international news. So coronavirus update, the general election of 2022, and of course that voting that will be happening tomorrow. Take a look at that, and remember to we will be looking at other parts of the region, and we move on to Uganda. That says Minister Kitutu battles 4 new challenges for Manafwa seat. Mr. Amos Wabomba, a resident of Manafwa Town Council and an opinion leader, says the parliamentary race will be an ultimate test for the minister's reign. So still on politics, but their tally of the coronavirus: Kenya is at 49,997, Tanzania still at 509, Uganda 11,443, while Rwanda is at 11,557. And in Rwanda, we have a Libyan asylum seeker begin to leave for other countries. Now, Rwanda has been very accommodating of asylum seekers and even gone out of its way to save people who were caught up in, trafficking and stranded in certain countries because they were trying to get their way to greener pastures. So this is a development to that work that that country has been contributing in trying to aid the world in ridding itself off of, the ills of migration that is brought on by economic challenges all over Africa. So take a look and see what the latest is. The Rwanda Today is the website to be checking out this morning for that bit of news. And then Al Jazeera is up next. Let's see what's making headlines. Barrett takes U.S. Supreme Court oath deepening conservative grip. We do know there has been a lot of conversation and reservations from the Democrats because Barrett is a Catholic, she is a Republican, and of course her values will espouse those of Republicans and be very conservative. So what we are hearing here on the picture obviously speaks for itself. She was sworn in, and obviously the Republicans and the liberal thinkers shall have a hard time having their views or their opinions sailing through without much of blockage because of her views, and she puts more weight on the Republican side of things as far as the Supreme Court is concerned. Then we have the CNN news agency giving us Uyghurs turn to Trump, desperate for action. Scheme in this is a part of China says their only hope is a second term for U.S. President Donald Trump. And then we have Senate confirms Barrett as Supreme Court judge. That's a big story right now. And then China still is also here. China to hit Lockheed Martin Boeing for sanctions over Taiwan arms sale. And then a comment by Jared Kushner, according to this analysis, is very revealing about what he feels about Black Americans. Read that, and of course, life during pandemic. An overview of what's happening there as far as coronavirus infections are concerned. And last but not least, the Global Times is from China, 5-year plan to prioritize tech innovation. And of course, expecting little impact from the outbreak is what we're seeing there, as the picture there shows testing. Then we have Anti-Group to raise 34.5 billion, being the biggest IPO. They're focusing on business, coronavirus, and the world politics. And right here, we are seeing Barrett still making headlines as she is sworn in as one of the Supreme Court judges in the United States. Remember, to be a part of the conversation and give us your opinion, you need to tell us what you think as far as this question is concerned. Do you think the reservations raised by the DP Ruto about the BBI report are valid? Do you think the reservations raised by the Deputy President about the BBI report are valid? The hashtag to use is KTN Morning Express, and be a part of the online conversation as well as the one that we're about to have here in studio. Now, to take a look at what's making headlines locally and to analyze the stories, Agri Chabeda is here to help us do that. Now, welcome to the show, Agri Chabeda.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, now let's start off with the Standard. It has a very elaborate overview of what happened yesterday, and they're calling it the moment of truth. Here they say confessions. Uhuru reveals Ruto knew about handshake, says tribalism and idle youth are a time bomb, while DP makes a case for BBI, against the BBI, and then Raila says it's game on. So there are a few quotes here from the individual leaders. First, I'll start with a quote from Uhuru Kenyatta, who said, the fact of the matter is we are a tribal nation and we want to run for that. Let us not cheat one another. I will also admit that I have been part of and parcel of the negative politics. We must address the issues of inclusivity. You're having a leader there looking inward. And then we have ODM leader Raila Odinga coming out and saying we don't want proletariat revolutions, and it can never be led by the bourgeoisie. And so he says that this is his case for the BBI report, and he further says that we want this to be a unifying document and the referendum process to be unifying factor, and if possible a non-contested process. Then the DP comes in a quick rejoinder and says, my friend Raila, I hope you are not referring to me as bourgeoisie. We do not have the luxury to say I don't care. We do not have the luxury to walk away. The punishment given to good people who do not participate in politics and governance in their country is to be ruled by fools. This is the front page of the Standard. Mr. Chabeda, what stood out as far as what was said yesterday?
I think by and far what stood out most was the admission by the president about the tribal nature of our politics.
Yes.
I think, to me, that was the biggest statement he made, and the fact that he admitted that he himself has been part and parcel of that problem, I think is a very good thing. What's most important is if we can use this as a springboard to actually have a discussion about our tribal politics and find a way in which we can actually maybe use BBI to actually bring up that inclusivity that is claimed. I think going forward, let's see in the next few weeks whether there will be what we might call frank and open and honest debate on the BBI, or whether it will fall into a heckling contest between different groups.
Okay, and speaking of heckling, and this is also in line with that question you're asking our viewers this morning, the Deputy President did something that was quite brave, because many were even speculating that he might not attend, but he did stand up and make his point and express his reservations. At the same time, he did sit there and had a good humor as the President actually made a few jocular points about him being part and parcel of the handshake, but at the same time later on coming out, as Raila said, and saying this child is not mine. So what did you make of his general conduct and, of course, his standing up and speaking his truth?
I think the Deputy President was consistent with his recent stand, where he has generally been on a different side from the President on a number of issues. He came out and decided that this was a platform where he'd make his reservations known about the BBI, because I think if he hadn't done that, I think there wouldn't have been another good opportunity for him to do so. And I think, looking at the big picture, much as one would expect the Deputy President to be respectful of the President and not stand against him.
Right.
I think the way things have gone, it was not a surprise. I think also, while we are trying to make amendments to the 2010 Constitution, we must also accept that its presence and the fact that we have it is a very reason why what happened yesterday is possible. I think 20 years ago, this would not have been possible at all.
For sure. Yeah. But then there was an element that indicated there wasn't a tolerance towards divergent views. What did you make of that? And do you think what would it take for us to be open-minded when it comes to people and them not going according to what we want?
Yeah, I think leading up to yesterday and for the last maybe 6 months, I think maybe even going back a year ago when the Tanzanian president was here, when BBI was first presented to the public, there has been a clear division politically between Deputy President Ruto and his allies and the president and his allies. And I think yesterday was a culmination, because the document went out. It was meant to be modified to take into account the different divergent views. And yesterday was meant to be now the final document that has taken into account those views. But clearly one can see that the document somehow is being probably politicized by people on different sides of the contest for 2022.
Okay. Now, what do you make of this headline? The Daily Nation says Uhuru and Ruto clash. The president tells off the deputy president for abandoning the Jubilee team and reveals that the DP was aware of the handshake with ODM leader Raila Odinga. In fact, he did consult on the process and made suggestions on who was to sit on the whole, process. So when you see this is a revelation that many did not expect. So what did that mean to you when you heard it? What did it prick up in your mind?
I think what it brought out was really more the rivalry between Deputy President Ruto and Right Honorable Raila Odinga, the former Prime Minister, because he has taken an increasingly important role in driving the BBI process.
Yes.
We also know that he is not in government, and I think that dichotomy between the two is really what the problem is all about. Yes.
And we shall be having more on that with the conversation that Michael shall be having later on in the show. But before we get into that, it's important to note that coronavirus is still with us, and the headlines are indicating that. When you take a look at the nation this morning, we are told, here comes the second wave, no COVID beds in hospitals. We were told that an appropriate capacity will be 300 beds. Not every hospital has made it to that, but many, particularly in certain hotspots, are reporting a capacity. They have most of the beds occupied, and people are still testing positive for that. Lucky enough, there are certain conditions where you can get yourself taken care of from home. And also on the front page of the Standard this morning, you're told a similar headline: COVID patients jam hospital. Pandemic, public and private hospitals are reporting a strain as the number of people suffering from coronavirus countrywide surge. So we did reopen the economy, restrictions were eased because things were not very good for most of the business people, working class people. But at the same time, it seems that that actually has contributed to what is being termed as a second wave. What do you make of that?
Yes, I think the second wave is definitely manifesting itself here with us. And I believe that the general populace have understood that COVID is here, but they've also had to balance between safe distancing and the economic realities of having to earn a living.
Yes.
The government on its part, I think, and the political class, I think, have not shown themselves out too well as leaders, in the sense that they do not seem to be very, very disciplined in social distancing.
Yes.
And this has led, I think, to a general dismissal or attitude by the public, whereby they don't take social distancing too seriously. Yeah.
But do you think it's a question of them not having a way of balancing between their economic needs and this disease that to most seems like something that is just a figment of the imagination up until it hits close to home, or a lack of trust in the powers that are telling them you need to social distance and stay away from one another and behave in a certain way that will ensure that you are safe? What do you think could the problem be?
I think the biggest problem is the economic challenge, whereby people really need to have money in their pockets to be able to go on with their lives. When then they see the political class dismissing or ignoring or not being disciplined enough to maintain social distance, then they themselves just get on with their lives. And unfortunately, part of what you see now is a rise in the number of cases that are taking place.
And when you look at page 12 of the Standard this morning, surge in COVID-19 cases put strain on hospitals. They're giving us a tally of the deaths. October 18th, there were 7. October 19th, 7. October 28th, 3. October 21st, we were at 16. Then October 22nd, 12, October 23rd, 14, October 24th, 12, and by the time we were on the 25th, we were at 6 cases. One that has actually got the attention of the public is the death of a head teacher in the coast, and principal of Tononoka Primary School succumbed to coronavirus. And of course, in this particular school, we're having 11 teachers who have tested positive for that disease. So when you see this sort of situation, given that we were toying with the idea of reopening schools and going full swing ahead, what do you make of it? And perhaps this should encourage pause from the leader, the powers that be, the leaders who are in charge of the Ministry of Education.
I think personally I was one of those who believed that schools should reopen in a managed way, and I think the government did that. They did not fully open the schools.
Yes.
It was more like a pilot. It is very unfortunate that the headmaster in Tononoka Secondary School has succumbed to COVID. I think to me that should be a springboard to do some real checks to find out what actually went wrong in the way it was managed.
Okay.
It is one incident. It is not widespread across the spectrum. So what is important is to learn from it and make sure that the other schools are taking certain protocols, and the reaction is much faster when it happens.
Yeah,
and,
but then
based
given,
on that, then they
given
can
the
decide.
difficulties that we have with schools, infrastructure, then obviously not going to be building new structures overnight, and the fund, there are constraints when it comes to funds. So what do you think should be the way forward, considering those difficulties? Most schools don't even have water, running water.
Yes, I think COVID-19 has exposed some very basic, fundamental challenges that we face in everyday life. One of them is lack of water, which leads to poor sanitation. And poor sanitation, we know, will increase the chances of COVID infections.
Yes.
Those are areas that should be tackled by the government on a wider scale. Schools, expansion of space in schools should be another one.
Yeah.
Hospitals, I think an opportunity was missed in the early need to increase and improve our hospital capacity.
Indeed.
And those are things that I think should really get on the agenda, so that going forward, these things we are in a better place than we were before COVID or no COVID. Yes.
Now, far from that, let's take a look at the back page of the Daily Nation. This morning, we're told MP faces graft charges in a 12 billion shilling saga. This is Madira Member of Parliament Rigathi Gachagua, who is today set to be presented in court on charges of corruption and money laundering after he allegedly failed to explain the source of billions of shillings that passed through his bank account. And he's not the first one. Obviously, many of our leaders have been put on the spotlight as far as that and are facing court cases. So when you see this one, 5.2 billion shillings that Asset Recovery Agency located in the MP's account, what comes to mind?
This is a staggering amount of money, assuming that he cannot explain where it came from. Yeah. It is even more astonishing that it could have been going on for so long without the authorities doing anything about it. Be that as it may, I think I would just say let the case go on and we find out the truth of the matter and find out what the trail of the money was, where it came from, where it went, and why. I'm very sure that with this volume of money, many other people may get implicated as the case progresses.
Yes. Now, given that this is a situation that has been ongoing and we're now talking about constitutional change and the BBI, do you think it sufficiently addresses corruption as an ill that this country has been facing for decades now?
Graft is a very difficult thing within the Kenya because it is so widespread and so complicated. I think until we see several such cases concluded, is when we can begin to say we are beginning to turn the corner, because there is no doubt that the DPP has done its utmost to bring cases to court. There is no doubt that EACC has also been doing its utmost to bring cases to court. Yes. But over the years, not a single of these cases really, I mean, apart from the one that was recently concluded regarding NCPB, has been concluded. And in any case, even the one of NCPB, when you look at the amount of money involved and you then compare it to the kind of monies that we are talking about in some of these other cases, it is minuscule. So let's see whether some of these cases can be not just concluded, but also concluded quickly. Yes,
and of course asset recovery is a huge thing, that a conversation that has been more and more popular right now, not just getting it to the level of prosecution and punishment, but at the same time giving back to the state what seems to be have lost, which is essentially the taxpayers' money. Where do you stand on that?
Asset recovery, quite frankly, I have been a bit apprehensive about the manner in which the asset recovery has been taking place, because they seem to have this power to make a decision and just decide that they're going to confiscate your property without due process. There is no doubt that it is possible that, and it is a fact that there's a lot of people with unexplained wealth but they must go through the process the same way this Graft case is going. We can't have two different processes where one you have to go to court and people have to prove that you have done something wrong.
Yes.
Whereas in another case, you have a group of technocrats who can wake up tomorrow and decide that they are taking your stuff and cutting it away.
Okay, now speaking of court cases, on page 11 of The Nation this morning, there's a story here that tells us about Haji wanting Waititu to undergo medical tests after skipping court cases. The court officials and, of course, the prosecution is seemingly having a difficult time dealing with the former Kiambu Governor Ferdinand Waititu, and, of course, now there's calling for tests to ensure that this person is medically sound. The director of the public prosecution, the article says, Nurdin Haji wants a Nairobi court to order medical examination for the former Kiambu governor, and of course he made the application after this Mr. Waititu failed to turn up in the anti-corruption court yesterday for the third time for a criminal trial of the 510 million corruption cases. He wants the court to direct the Kenya Medical Practitioners and Dentists Board to appoint 3 doctors to establish the former county boss's health condition so that they can know which way forward. What do you make of this?
First and foremost, I'm surprised that a warrant of arrest has not been issued.
If he says he's sick,
I'm not sure that I understand through which channel he says he's sick, because if he's failed to appear in court 3 times, really he should be arrested, and then that determination should be made at that point. By presentations being made about his medical condition. Be that as it may, it could be true that he's unwell, or there could be other reasons. But there appears to be a lot of bending over backwards to deal with this case.
Yeah, and with that running theme of corruption, I'll finish off with page 10 of the Daily Nation here. We're told report recommends, that is the BBI report, total war on corruption, cartels that are impoverishing farmers. Agriculture is seen as one of the greatest, one of actually the backbones of our economy. At the same time, we're having certain elements that are working tirelessly and, you know, sucking dry the small farmer who obviously forms the fabric of the economy and is very important in ensuring that we stay afloat. So do you think the BBI report will sufficiently work against that and help us deal with this menace, particularly cartels, once and for all?
Yes, I think the Deputy President actually highlighted that point as one of the areas that has not been covered by the BBI report. I haven't read the report myself, so I can't comment too much as to whether that is true or not. But what is a fact is that if we focus on our agricultural potential, its potential to generate jobs, its potential for us to add value to the products, the fact that it's a big percentage of our economy, I think we'll see our GDP go up by a few percentage points, and one of those problems that were being discussed yesterday, which is unemployment, will begin to be tackled from the bottom. Okay,
now if you're curious about what the report actually says, this article is quite conclusive when it comes to that. It says it suggests to focus seriously on breaking cartels, that in the sector, competition authority should address price fixing and antitrust activities, and that stifle competition, institute structures and regulations around value chain of different sectors to help farmers, cut on middlemen, enhance, improve livestock breeding, hiring more veterinarians and agricultural extensions, offers and improve disease monitoring and surveillance system, expand agricultural and, and livestock extension and advisory services, and ensure that they include advice on clear standards and market linkages by both levels of government, provide proper incentives to private sector and cooperatives, and the necessary coordination to build a cold chain system throughout the country. What I see missing here quite conspicuously is that the integration of tech into the agricultural sector, which is vital in today's world. What do you make of that?
I think it all sounds very complicated, what has been written there.
Yes.
But to cut a long story short, yes, there are, number one, the people who make money in the agricultural sector are middlemen. That's a fact.
For sure.
And the value chain has to be changed such that the people who sweat and take the real risk actually get their just reward. And secondly, the government should assist in getting technology to link the farmers directly with the market, so that the margins get better. The turnovers are faster because of the direct connection. I saw something on TV the other day between concerning Rwanda and Alibaba, which started when Jack Ma came here 2 or 3 years ago, and now Rwanda are selling coffee directly to the Chinese market, and it's gone up 4 or 5 times in 2 years. Yes,
that's an excellent example, and hopefully we can follow suit, because we cannot survive as far as agriculture is concerned without incorporating some of these modern technological solutions to accessing markets. But of course, those middlemen, I'm sure, would not be happy with that. So perhaps that is the bigger problem, dealing with cartels and middlemen, and then sailing through to other ways of accessing markets locally and worldwide. Agri Chabeda, thank you very much for being a part of Press Review this morning. Remember, you can be a part of the show by answering this question that we're asking you today. Do you think the reservations raised by the DP Ruto about the BBI report are valid? Do you think the reservations raised by the DP Ruto about the BBI report are valid? And some of you have already woken up and are up on Twitter telling us what you think. Here we have Njenga Kungu Paul, who says, definitely, DP Ruto is a Kenyan with reservations just as anyone else. These reservations will not be well addressed and possibly cause political and economic turmoil. BBI document is a document creating platform for us to air our views, whether one is a leader or a common mwananchi. Then we have Job Kemboi here saying absolutely valid reservations due to the election of the Constitution of 2010 in its proposals and underpinned by sabotage of independence of crucial institutions. David Omwami simply says yeah. And then we have Dawn here who says yes, they are valid and they should be keenly looked at, because this is a national conversation which could be considerate, which should be considerate of the views of all groups. Then we have Pius Muthui who says yes. And lastly, I'm going to read a comment by John Tosh who said, so Ruto might be speaking for hustlers today, but once he patches things with Uhuru, he'll be singing a different tune. He's feeling a bit optimistic about the DP stands, but there's much more coming up on the other side of this break. We shall be talking about the BBI report and digging deeper into it. Michael shall be doing that particular part of the discussion, but remember, we encourage you to participate in the conversation and let us know what you think, so that you can be part and parcel of the show. Let's take that break.